Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very good morning to all of you present here. Myself, Dr. Devika D. Shetty, welcoming you all for today's webinar session. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. P.T. Keshavan Nambishan sir. Sir has a family tradition of Ayurveda. His grandfather was the chief physician, the king of Mysore at the royal palace. He is the chief medical officer at the Arya Vaidya Chikitsalayam and Research Institute. He joined here in 2003 and been here since for almost 2 decades now. And he was awarded his BAMS degree in the year 2002 from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Karnataka. He has immense experience in treating a wide range of diseases of patients across the globe. He has been one of the physicians in rheumatoid arthritis study taken up by the Ayurvedic Trust in the years 2003 to 2008 and funded by NIH. Basically, rheumatoid arthritis is like running a marathon with the flu while in an existential crisis. So let's learn much about rheumatology spectrum and Ayurveda by Dr. P.T. Keshwan sir. Now I kindly request sir to take over the session.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm honored and it's a great pleasure to get invited to a college where one of my close childhood friend is a principal. So Dr. Harsha and myself go a long way from the high school days. We were together and we continued our friendship right through the Ayurvedic study, and he is one of my close friends, and it's a great honor that he has invited me to this session. I thank the management and Dr. Harsha for inviting me. The topic I have selected today is of great relevance to a lot of people, especially in the field of Ayurveda. Rheumatological spectrum of diseases is a spectrum where the Ayurvedic practitioners feel more confident of treating, and also the public perception that Ayurveda has a long-term remedy for chronic diseases of rheumatology is a truth. Next slide, please. So basically, I will be talking about the practical aspects of treating rheumatology, understanding rheumatology, interpreting rheumatology. So it will be more of a practical session where I will be sharing my knowledge of treating, my knowledge in the sense the institute as such, wherein we treat lot of rheumatological diseases. So 3 points I would like to highlight in this whole session regarding what we will be discussing. First and foremost is the intervention part in treating rheumatological diseases. Basically, we have to always understand that we are living in a world where there are lot of choices in terms of medical intervention. You have different systems of medicine wherein the Western system or the allopathic system is the primary source of healthcare throughout the world. So the option before a person suffering from any disease, including rheumatological diseases, is many. So as you know that every day there are lot of new inventions and lot of discoveries happening in the field of rheumatology. New drugs are coming out. So we as Ayurvedic practitioners, without compromising our Adharabhuta Siddhantas, have to rise to that challenge and treat any case, including rheumatological conditions. The second part I would be dealing is the interpretation of the rheumatological diseases. Like in any disease, Ayurveda or Ayurvedic practitioners, because of its strong fundamental Tridosha Siddhanta, we are able to treat any kind of diseases, as you can see with the example of the COVID-19. So the right form of interpretation which can strike a right balance between the modern view and the allopathic, the modern view and the Ayurvedic fundamentals are very important. So how you interpret a new disease or a condition which has been explained in Western system of medicine, take it up and convert it into or interpret it into Ayurvedic way, and how you can do it, that is very important, and that decides, that makes or breaks the ultimate outcome of any treatment in Ayurveda. The third important point which I would like to highlight is the integration. When we say integration, it doesn't mean that we are compromising on our science. As you can know that Charaka, Sushruta in his Sutrasthana, I think you might all have studied a very good quotation by Sushruta where he says, Ekam Shastram Adhiyano Navidyat Shastra Nishchayam Tasmad Bahushruta Shastram Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha. When our acharyas were broad enough and they were forthcoming in accepting the best and the cream of knowledge from other systems, we as practitioners in this modern world, we have to take up that challenge. Integrate, ultimately we have to keep one point in mind. It is the patient's comfort and the long-term benefit we are looking at when we treat any disease, especially when we treat rheumatological diseases which are kashtasadhya or yapya in their nature. It becomes a lifelong commitment towards a patient when you start treating most of the rheumatological diseases. So integration in the sense, how much of integration, what type of integration has to be done, wherein the Ayurvedic fundamentals are not compromised, but the patient is also benefited in long run. So the integration is very important, not only in treating rheumatological diseases, but any disease. If we have to rise to the challenge, we have to integrate and see how best we can deliver the goods to the patient. Next slide, please. This is a very common definition. Just to remind everyone, rheumatology is a condition which causes either degeneration, inflammation, or both, majorly affecting the musculoskeletal system, the connective tissues, which also includes the joints, tendons, ligaments, blood vessels, nerves, skin, and in many cases you can see internal organs like heart, lungs, and kidneys getting affected. So it is a broad spectrum. Rheumatology is a broad spectrum. Next slide, please. So how do you understand Ayurvedic perspective of rheumatology? So as we studied in our undergraduate classes, most of the times when we read diseases, for one disease in Ayurveda, we have one allopathic diagnosis. That is how the texts are written and we have been taught. So that doesn't make perfect sense when you go into practice. So rheumatological diseases being a conglomeration of symptomology, so it is affecting different systems. So it will be very unfortunate or unreasonable to restrict or correlate one disease of allopathy with one disease of Ayurveda. So it should be, as Ayurvedic fundamentals say, a combination of dosha, roga, and most importantly, I would have to stress this part, the avastha vishesha. So what differentiates modern treatment with and Ayurvedic treatment is the avastha pradhana chikitsa. The avastha pradhana chikitsa, 10 patients of rheumatoid arthritis in 10 different conditions may receive 10 different combinations of medicines. So that is the uniqueness, the multi-dimensional aspect of Ayurvedic treatment. So when we take into account the Samprapti Vigatana, these three are very important. Next slide, please. So this is not related to any text or any source. This is a general classification I have made myself, keeping in mind the treatment experience what I have done all these years. So there are diseases which are easily treatable, there are diseases which are commonly seen, but to help to bridge the link between Ayurveda and Western system, we can classify the diseases of rheumatological spectrum into the following. So it may sometimes overlap also. So it is you have to take it in the broader sense. Sometimes it may overlap. So first and foremost, most of the Ayurvedic practitioners come across the musculoskeletal diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, osteoarthritis, lumbar spondylosis, cervical spondylosis, all these degenerative changes. These come under the musculoskeletal spectrum. There are certain diseases which are now very rampant, but not many doctors might have come across. But in our institute, we regularly see patients of SLE, patients of scleroderma. Most of these conditions can be taken into the connective tissue disorders. Then we have the regular degenerative age-related wear and tear diseases of the musculoskeletal system, osteoarthritis, lumbar spondylosis, these are the key, or these are the most important diseases our Ayurvedic practitioners treat, and most of the public respond to Ayurveda when they have these conditions. Then we have vasculitis spectrum, where you have a lot of pathologies happening in the vascular system, inflammations of the arteries, veins, capillaries. So there are certain conditions like Kawasaki's disease, Behçet's disease. Then you have the smoker's disease, the Buerger's disease. And another important, but fastly we are, what you can say, people are getting diagnosed more with such conditions. For the last 10-15 years of my practice, there has always been a rise of fibromyalgia conditions, most frequently affecting the females. 9 out of 10 patients of fibromyalgia are women. So this fibromyalgia is more frequent diseases we are coming across. Maybe one of the reason, maybe the socio psychological effects present in the society. Then we have certain dermatological conditions like psoriatic arthritis. There are some abscess like conditions like hidradenitis suppurativa. So these conditions are the general. There are huge spectrum of diseases which are very rare, and once you are familiar and you are able to understand and treat these conditions, these general most frequently seen conditions, I think you will be confident enough to treat any rheumatological condition. Now, when you look at the correlations or the Rogavasthas we see in Ayurveda, it is a spectrum of diseases we have to look into while treating musculoskeletal disease, while treating rheumatological diseases. Most of the treatment we do are based on various clinical conditions or Rogavasthas mentioned in Ayurveda. Most important being Vataraktam, Amavatam, Sandhivatam, Jwaram, Pandu, Kushtham, Shofam, Vatavyadhi, Vidradi. So looking at the Avastha Vishesha of a disease, any of these or a combination of these can be, you may start a treatment with Jwara Chikitsa, then move on to Amavata Chikitsa, then move on to Vatarakta Chikitsa. Ultimately, you may end up with Sandhivatam or a Vatavyadhi. So the Avastha Pradhana Chikitsa is the strong point of Ayurvedic management. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I am not going into the classical treatment protocol or the Chikitsa Sutra as mentioned in the classics. I am taking a general approach which is more practical, but these are all a gist of what has been told in the classics. So in general, when you are looking at a person with a rheumatological condition, there are 4 or 5 points. Some of them are general, some of them are very specific, which have to be kept in mind while starting or planning any or assessing a patient. First, the dosha pradhana avastha has to be, that is true for any disease. The dosha dushya avastha is common for any disease. Dosha avastha has to be taken into account, whether it is vata pradhana, pitta pradhana, or dvandva pradhana, samsargaja, sanipataja, all those things have to be kept in mind. The dushyam, which dushyam can give the dhatu level dushti, as well as we can interpret the systemic involvement. So dushya involves dhatu, mala, upadhatu, srotas, rogamarga. So I have just put it as etc. So you have to look at the dhatu dushti, you have to look at the mala dushti, you have to look at the sroto vaigunya, which srotas is affected. You have to look at the rogamarga involved. So all these factors, some diseases affect the upadhatus, like the Acharya has mentioned Snayugata Vata. There is a mention of Sira Kandaras getting affected in many of the Vatarakta conditions. The Avastha Vishesha, which is the heart of treating rheumatological diseases. And the Avastha Vishesha and understanding the Avastha Vishesha will make or break the treatment you have planned for a patient. So Samavastha, Niramavastha has to be differentiated. As everyone knows, the Utthana Avastha or the Gambhira Avastha of the disease has to be assessed, and intervention at what level, a Chirakari or an Ashukari level, a chronic condition. You have a Ashukari condition where you have a reactive arthritis in terms of chikungunya or dengue, where you have a post-viral arthralgia where there is acute pain. How do you manage? Or a Chirakari avastha where the patient comes to you after roaming about and running behind Western system of medicine, and he comes to Ayurveda after few years. What is the quantum of damage the person has undergone? What is the stage of the disease he is in? Is it staying in the Utthana Avastha only, or it has moved to the Gambhira Avastha? All these factors have to be understood. And the Roga Pradhanata. So when you are looking at a person having a particular disease, rheumatological condition, you have to take a call. What line of management you have to adopt in different stages. So as I told you in the previous slide, how do you start the treatment? Do you start with the Jora line of management initially? Assess the Ama Nirama, then move on to Vatarakta spectrum, or you have a condition wherein you have Amavata state where you can directly go into treatment according to the Ama Chikitsa, or you have a condition where there is lot of Shofa involved, where you need lot of Shofara Chikitsa. You have a condition where there are lot of skin lesions or vasculitis kind of condition where there is oozing, burning, inflammation, infection. How do you go about it? So all these conditions have to be understood. Next is the Anubandha Vyadhi and Chikitsa. See, Anubandha Vyadhi can be comorbidities. A person who is coming to you has other spectrum of diseases, including very commonly in females you find hypothyroidism, you find hormonal imbalances, diabetes, hypertension, various other Anubandha diseases. So we have to strike a balance wherein you have to create a protocol or a chikitsa which doesn't interfere with his pre-existing disease. And that is of utmost importance. You have conditions in allopathy where you are given medicines to treat one condition or an arthritis, and your diabetes level shoots up. So I have seen many patients who have taken allopathic medications for rheumatoid arthritis and they have got diabetes. So it has to be planned accordingly. And most important factor in disease managing any disease, not only rheumatological spectrum, any disease, the Satvavajaya Chikitsa, the psychosomatic component of the disease has to be always kept in mind. As you all know, most of the diseases fluctuate with your stress levels, which makes more sense in most of the rheumatological conditions, which are most of them are autoimmune in nature, and most of the autoimmune diseases have a psychosomatic bearing. So whenever you are treating a patient with rheumatological condition, it is very important to understand the sattva avastha of the patient. So, and accordingly, we have to keep an eye on the sattva avastha of the patient, and psychosomatic management is very important, which can be in terms of counseling, in terms of yoga, meditation, maybe in terms of certain medical intervention also. So people, a lot of patients who are coming to you already have gone to allopathy and they have been brainwashed, in the sense, see, the way of telling the patient also matters. So the blunt way of telling the patient that this is an incurable disease and at the end you may be bedridden, saying this to a patient in the first stage of a disease may have a psychological bearing. And most of the patients, when they come to us, they ask, is it, the first question they ask when we start writing a prescription, and they will ask, if you don't mind, is this disease curable? They very well know that it is not curable and they have heard it from all other sources, but it is a hope against hope. They will ask us also, and we are used to it. So we have to tell the same thing. So the psychosomatic component is very important. And nowadays, with advances in the Western system of medicine, you have a specialized branch of clinical practice known as rheumatology, and it has made great advancement in the field of rheumatology. You have to understand that as the world is shrinking and lot of new treatment modalities are available to people in India. See, I can give you an example in Coimbatore. As I don't know how many people know that Coimbatore is one of the foremost cities in terms of healthcare systems. So Coimbatore is having a lot of good healthcare facilities. We have great hospitals, specialities. You have big orthopedic specialty hospitals. You have multi-speciality hospitals. You have ENT hospitals, which are very famous. Excuse me. Sorry. So they have a lot of options available, and you would be surprised to know that even in government medical colleges nowadays, especially as I know of Coimbatore, you have got very good disease modifying drugs available to the general public in terms of biologics. You know, the biologics are the latest advancement in terms of medication, where in the open market, a single shot of injection may cost anywhere about 10,000 to 50,000 rupees. These are available in the government medical colleges also. So the options are many. And when we treat, when we see patients of rheumatological spectrum, we have to keep this point in mind while treating them. If the patient is on some allopathic anti-rheumatic drugs, it is very important to understand the pharmacokinetics of the drug he is taking. Most importantly, or most rampantly, we see the usage of methotrexate, usage of azaron, usage of steroids. and nowadays we see usage of biologics. So when a patient is treating a rheumatological condition, it is very important to see that what are all the other interventions he is already having, and an Ayurvedic doctor should have the knowledge about those medicines, and he should have a working experience of how to stop it, withdraw it, or taper it over a period of time. So he has to have that knowledge. Next slide, please. This is the general protocol, what everyone knows and everyone follows, the Shodhana, Shamana range of treatment modalities. So with specific reference to the rheumatological conditions. So you have the Shamana line of management where Langhana, Deepana, Pachana, Svedana, Rukshana, all these chikitsas are employed. And in Shodhana, everyone knows that the overall effect of Panchakarma Chikitsa. Next slide, please. A simple practical approach. I have given a chart how you face a patient with any rheumatological condition. So first you have to rule out the Ama or the Nirama Avastha. See, Ama Avastha and Nirama Avastha has to be ruled in many conditions, especially very commonly I can see you have a patient who is on disease modifying drugs in allopathy. He will come and sit with you where clinically you will not be able to appreciate any Ama Lakshanas. So he is doing his routine work, no pain, no inflammation, no stiffness. So if a patient comes with in such a condition, how do you go about it? Or you get a classical case of typical Amavastha in rheumatological disease, how do you go about it? So that has to be decided. So Amavastha has to be treated with Deepana, Pachana and Rukshana Chikitsa. Niramavastha has to have, you can either do a Shamana line of management like most of us do in an OPD level, or you can do a Shodhana level management as an inpatient. So among the Panchakarmas, Vasti, Virechana and Rakta Mokshana are relevant to most of the rheumatological diseases. And at last, any Ayurvedic treatment has to end with Rasayana. So in case of rheumatology also, after the Panchakarma or Shamana Chikitsa, you have to keeping on a long-term maintenance treatment. As you know that most of these conditions are Kashta Sadhya or Yapya. You have to have a long-term management plan. So long-term management plan is Vatahara, Snehana, Rakta Prasadana and Rasayana. Next slide, please. This is also a general clinical approach towards the Amavastha. As you all know, and everyone is familiar, the Kosthagata Ama symptoms are very profound and it can be appreciated by any Ayurvedic practitioner. You have Agnimandyam, Ajirnam, Malabandham, you have Amla Pitta conditions, body, heaviness in the body, bitterness in the tongue. We call it, we have some kind of Manda Jwaram. The patient says that if he checks the temperature, it is normal, but he is feeling feverish. So it's a very common, any rheumatological condition, if the patient is in an Amavastha or an inflammatory stage, he will precisely say that as it gets by the evening, he feels feverish, but when he checks the temperature, it is normal. So that we call it as Manda Jwara. And Shula. Shula with respect to Koshtha is Shula in the Koshtha, Koshtha Shula. Next, please. So Dhatugata Amam. So Dhatugata Amam, clinically what we see is acute to moderate inflammatory pathology at various levels of affliction or various systems. You can take it as the Dhatugata Ama. So it is different for different conditions. You have Sandhi Shula and Sandhi Shota. You have inflammatory changes in the muscles. You have inflammatory changes in the skin. You have inflammatory changes in the blood vessels. So these are all the Dhatukata Ama Lakshanas. So you have heaviness of the body, body pain, you have swelling, stiffness. Pain may be localized to one joint, maybe in terms of osteoarthritis, or it may be sarvangam, where in cases of rheumatoid arthritis, SLEs. Then in cases of rasa rakta dushti, in rheumatological diseases like psoriasis and some kinds of vasculitis, you have the pitta predominance, where you have itching and burning, and you have sometimes you have oozing also. Manda Jwara is even a classical rasa dushti lakshana. There may be weight loss or gain, fatigue. So these are all the Dhatugata Ama Lakshanas in general we see in clinical practice, which you can correlate easily. Next slide, please. A simple protocol I have just laid out for you, very simple, very basic. So Ama Chikitsa in terms of Abhyantra Chikitsa and Bahya Chikitsa. So you have simple, and these are all very practical approach you have to take. So we have to see the Chikitsa Sutra is very elaborate, very classical, and the Vaidya has to use his yukti. He has to take his judgment call and what is relevant. So in that sense, I have taken few Ama Chikitsa protocols. Mainly we look at Upavasam and Deepana Pachanam. Upavasam doesn't mean that you have to fast throughout. So you have Upavasam where you like in the Jwara Chikitsa, Tiktarasa Pradhana Yavagu, Tiktarasa Pradhana food can be light food, Yavagu Tiktakorasa, Peya Yavagu with Tiktarasa Dravyas can be given. Pachana Dravyas, when we look in terms of, see, Upavasa can be achieved with food. Pachana, Deepana, Pachana, even Deepana can be Adravya, but Pachana should be with some medication. So I have used, or I have put across formulations which we use on a regular basis in our institute. These are all, most of them who are familiar with the Kerala style of Ayurveda can relate to it, but these are all classical dravyas, classical yogas which are available in all the texts, and most of the pharmacies make these kashayams. So in terms of churna, so when you are looking at Pachana, I think I left out a point while writing this. I just want to elaborate on it. See, Pachana, Ama Pachana has two levels of management. You have a Kapha predominant condition, Kapha Vata predominant conditions, where you can use Katu Ushna Dravya, like Hingvashtaka Churna, Chitrakadivati, Lashunadivati, Hingwadivati. All these kashayams are Kapha Vata Pradhana Ama. But what would you do if you have a Pitta predominance, a Sama Pitta condition, where you need Ama Pachana, but you cannot use Katu Ushna Dravyas? So we have a concept in Ayurveda, we call it as Tikta Pachana Dravyas. When you look at the Jwara Chikitsa in Ayurveda, you can come across the concept of Tikta Pachana Dravyas. So for example, I can give you a Chitrakadi Vati. A Chitraka is an Ama Pachana, but is Katu Ushna Ruksha. Similarly, Musta is a Ama Pachana, but it is Tikta Anushna Shita. So if you have Tikta predominant conditions, we have to make use of Tikta Pachana Dravyas. One of the best examples is Guduchi, Musta. So in Sama Pitta conditions, Tikta Pachana has to be done. You cannot go for normal Katushna Pachana. So that has to be kept in mind. So that is one point I think I left out in the slide. So Churnam, Shaddharna Churnam is Tikta Pachaka in nature. Aishwanara is an Ushna Pachaka. Ingvashtakam is Ushna Pachaka. Triphala is a Tikta Pachaka. Avipatti is a Tikta Pachaka. Shankavati is also a Tikta Pachaka. Sudarshana is one of the best Tikta Pachakas. So all these are relevant to the condition you can use. Among Kashayams, Gandharva Hastadi is given when you have more of Pakvashaya, Gata Ama or Pakwashya Gata symptoms. Chirabilwadi is also good. Shadanga is very good in Tikta Pachana. Shadanga has been told as a Paniya in Ashtanga Hridaya Ghana Chandana Shuntyambu Parpat Oshira Sadhitam. But nowadays in the market we get Shadanga Kashayams also. Sukshma Churnam is also available. Indugandham Kashayam is very good Amapachaka. If a Kapha-Vata condition exists, then arishtams like Amritaristam, Abhayaristam, Mustaristam, if the patient is able to tolerate, he doesn't have any Pittas, Amla Pitta Lakshanas, arishtams can be given, and sometimes there is a mild burning. You can ask the patient to add some equal water and take, so they are able to tolerate it. And the importance of Eranda Taila, as you have Bhaishajya Ratnavali has told, Amavata Gajendrasya, Sharira Vanacharina. Eranda Taila, plain Eranda Taila or medicated Eranda Taila is a very good Amapachaka, but the condition has to be assessed accordingly. So Gandharva Hastadi Tailam is a very important component of Amachikitsa in many rheumatological conditions, including arthritis, and it is very much used in Kerala. You have Gandharvastadi Tailam, you have Gandharvastadi Kashayam also. Now we come across the Bahya Chikitsa. What are all the Amahara Chikitsa which can be done externally? We have to keep in mind most of the external Amahara Chikitsa, depending on the patient's condition, most of them are Ruksha, or they are it are all Rukshana Chikitsa. Maybe with minimum Alpa Sneha we can do Rukshana, or we can do only Rukshana depending on the severity of the Ama. So Udvartanam with oil or without oil, depending on the condition, you can use as a Ruksha Chikitsa. Valuka Swedam can be used. Churna Pinda Swedam with oil or without oil, depending on the stage of Ama. Dhanyamla Dhara is a very effective treatment which is used in our hospital for as an Bahya Ama Chikitsa. So Dhanyamla Dhara is very potent and very effective. 7 days of Dhanyamla Dhara followed by a mild Koshta Shuddhi Virechana takes out 70 to 80% of Dhatugata Ama. So it is very effective. And Kshira Dhara, as I mentioned, see, most of the Udvartana, Valuka, Churna Pinda, so Dhanyamla Dhara are Kapha Vata predominant conditions. When you have a Pitta based symptoms or Pitta based Sama Pitta Lakshanas, you cannot use all those Ushna Dravyas. So we use Kashaya Dhara, Kashaya Seka, simple Panchavalkala Kashaya Seka can be used. Kshira Panchagandha Kshira Dhara can be used, or simple Yashtimadu Kshira Dhara can be used. So Pittahara Dravyas can be used in the form of Kashaya or Kshira for Parisheka. So it is very helpful. Next slide, please. So Nirama Chikitsa I have classified into two parts. So depending on the dosha predominance, the Nirama Chikitsa for musculoskeletal spectrum of diseases, you can see what are all the key points we have to keep in mind when you are treating or when you are deciding Shamanaushadhis in a Nirama Avastha. So Doshahara effect, then it should be more of Sandhi Asti Vishesham. So when you look at the when you select a drug for a specific condition, so you have to look at the dosha pratinika, you have to look at the vyadhi pratinika, then you have to look at the roga prakarana, then you have to look at the mukhya dravya present in that combination, then you have to look at the phalashruti where it is been indicated, then also you have to look at the vishesha phalashruti. For example, Agastya Rasayana, even though it is told in Kasa Shwasa, when you look at the Phalashruti, it is also given in Khalitya and Palitya. So Khalitya and Palitya becomes the Vishesha Phalashruti of Agastya Rasayana. Similarly, when you look at Chavanaprasha can be, even though it is told in a different context, it is the Phalashruti, you can see that it can be used in Vataraktam. So Vataraktam becomes the special Samprapti, a special Phalashruti of a formulation. So in that sense, that also has to be kept in mind. So the Doshaharatva of medicine, the Sandhyasti Visheshatva of the medicine. So you have a simple, you have a Drakshadi Kashayam. The Drakshadi Kashayam is Pittahara, but it is limited to the Koshtha and Rasarakta Dhatu. You have Balaguruchadi Kashaya, which is Pittahara and somewhat Vata Pittahara, but it is more specific to the Sandhis. So that has to be decided. So Sandhyasti Vishesham has to be seen. Then most of the rheumatological spectrum, you have the Rakta Dushti happening. So Rakta Prasadhana is always kept in mind. And as I told you in the previous slide, the Sattvavajaya, the psychosomatic component, should never be forgotten while treating such conditions. So I have given a general list of medicines which can be used in different conditions. There are certain specific medicines which can be used in arthritis, especially Rasna Saptakam, where there is Vata Kapha predominance. You can use Rasnerandadi where there is Vata Pitta predominance. Maharasnadi is Shuddha Vata with little Pitta, or you can take it as a Kevala Vata condition. Balaguluchadi is almost can be used for Vata Pitta condition, more of Pitta predominance. Mahamanjishtadi is a broad spectrum of disease, broad spectrum Kashayam. It can be used for rheumatological conditions, it can use for dermatological condition, it can use for neurological condition. Even the Phalashruti says Medo Roge, Netra Roge, Manjishtadi Prashasyate. So even in Netra Roga and Medo Roga, Manjishtadi can be used. So in this condition, we can use Mahamanjishtadi where there is more of Pitta Rakta involvement. Tablets very commonly used, Yogaraja Gugulu, more of Vata Kapha condition, Kaishora Gugulu, more of Vata Pitta condition. Chanda Prabhavati is Shotahara, Shiva Guliga is Shotahara, Rasayana. So these medicines can be used. And from in the Shavana Chikitsa perspective, usually the practice, it is not a must in every case, but usually the practice, what we have learned and we have followed and we feel that it is effective also. Once the Ama Chikitsa is completed and you move on to more specific Shamana protocol, we start with Kashayams and then move on to Ghrutams and end with Rasayanam. So you are starting from Tikta Pradhana Dravyas and ending with Madhura Pradhana Vishesha Dravya, which is the most favorable rasa for a swastha person. So in terms of Ghruta, one of the most effective broad spectrum medicine what I have known is Guglu-Tiktaka Ghrutam. Guglu-Tiktaka Ghrutam is one of the most effective and a wonderful formulation which has a broad spectrum of action. At least in this talk, we are only talking about the rheumatological spectrum, but it is as relevant in ENT conditions, as relevant in cancer, as relevant in dermatological diseases, very effective in what you can call as infective conditions, very effective in vranas, diabetic ulcers. So it's a broad spectrum medicine and it is one of my favorite medicines in practice. So Guglu-Tiktaka Ghrutam, and when I have to mention one important aspect of Ghrutam, so you have to have a specific dosage which is very important to exert the action. For a healthy individual, if the Agni is good and he is able to tolerate, on an average 15 to 20 ml of ghee twice a day is very essential. So there are conditions wherein you slowly start with one spoon of ghee, and maybe in a week, 10 days, you go up to 3 to 4 spoons, 15 to 20 ml. And there are certain people who have see, ghee is, people, when you talk about ghee, all other unwanted bad and all the misconceptions get into the mind. I regularly give ghee in diabetics, even in triple heart vessel diseases, in all the dangerous conditions, what the allopathic people call. I regularly use Guglu-Tikta Ghritam, but the dosage has to be fixed. And sometimes when you are taking Guglu-Tikta Ghritam, you can add some Pachana churnas like Rajanyadi churna, or something like Hingwashtak churn, or Trikatu churn in a small amount, so that the Ghritam is digested well. So Guglu-Tikta Ghritam is very important in Vata, Pitta and Kapha. All the three conditions, more of Vata, Pitta spectrum of management. Rasna Dashamuladi Ghrita is Ghrita which can be given in most of the Kevala Vata conditions. For example, you have degenerative conditions like osteoarthritis, you have lumbar spondylosis, cervical spondylosis, wherein the Koshtagata ama is very limited. Dhatugata ama has to be treated at the initial level, and immediately you can put him on Kevala Vata Chikitsa. So Rasna Dashamuladi Ghritam is very, very effective in managing most of the degenerative diseases of the musculoskeletal system. So when there is only Vata dominance, or when you only need Vatahara Chikitsa, Rasna Dashamuladi is the choice. Because as you all know, Rasna Dashamuladi has Mamsarasa also, so it has that Brahmana effect. Then you have the regular Avartis, as most of the practitioners know about the Avartis. You have the Kshirabala Avarti, you have 3 Avartis, 7 Avartis, 14 Avartis, 21 Avartis, 41 Avartis, and now also you have the 101 Avarti. Most of the 101 Avarti are available in gel capsule form. So you have almost 10 drops of Kshirabala 101 Avarti in one capsule. So it is very easy to take. So Kshirabala Avarti can be given in combination with Kashayams, or in long run it can be used as a maintenance drug in most of the rheumatological condition. More of Vata Pitta effect, and it is very good to maintain or always bring down the inflammation, and the triggers of inflammation can be reduced with Kshirabala Avartis. Dhanvantram Avarti is also very effective. It has is a Vata Pitta level management, but it is very specific to patients who have a neurological input in their rheumatological condition. So it is very helpful in spinal conditions and neurological conditions. It can be given in long run. Balatailam is also very effective. Gandhatailam is also very effective when there is asthik shaya. Nirgunyadi erandam is, as I had quoted the shloka, as you know, Amavata Gajendrasya Sharira Vanacharana. So Erandataila is one of the best medicines, even at all levels of management. You can use it in Amavastha, you can use it in Niramavastha, you can use it in Shamana Avastha, you can use it as Rasayana Avastha. So Nirgundyadi Erandam specifically is specifically mentioned in Gridhrasi. I think it is been mentioned in Chakradatta. But Nirgundyadi Erandam can be used as a Mridu Virechanam or a Koshta Shuddhi Virechanam. You can ask the patients in long run to take Nirgundyadi Erandam twice a day at bedtime with some milk. Maybe 50 ml of milk. You can add 1 or 2 spoons of Nirgundyadi Erandam and ask the patient to take it at bedtime twice a week, which will have a very good overall maintenance level benefit. Next slide. The external treatment. See, most of the treatments what I have told are basic OPD level management. So we are talking about Shamana Chikitsa. So most of the management I am telling you is in OPD level cases. So there are different levels of management in Bahya Chikitsa. You have if there is a multiple joint involvement, as in classical arthritis, you need Sarvanga Abhyangam. There are certain conditions where one or two joints are affected and painful. So you can use local level Abhyanga. And there are acute conditions where initially there are good lepams and upanahams which can be prescribed in the OPD basis. So Sarvanga Abhyangam, Sacharadi Tailam, Kshirabala Tailam, Mahanarayana Tailam, all are, most of them are Vata Pitta Hara in nature, which can be used for long-term management. So there are patients whom I tell them at least take full body oil application twice a week. They themselves can apply, warm and apply the oil, stay for half an hour and take hot shower. So this is very easily done. So you can use Vatahara Thailas. Little bit of Vatahara Ushna Brahmana Thailas can be used, like Karpa Sasthyadi Thaila. A little bit of Shita Brahmana Thailas like Pinda Thaila can be used. And in patients of Kapha Prakriti and obese patients, you can use Chinchadi Thailam. So these oils are very effective Sarvanga level. And you have got patients who will always complain that once in a while they have pain in particular joints. So you have most of the aged people with arthritis, you have a secondary OA over RA. So you can use certain oils which is not used in Sarvanga level. So Vedanahara Thailas like Karpuradi Thaila, which is very effective in reducing the pain. Then you have Shotahara Thailas like Panchamla Thaila. Then you can use Pinda Thaila, where you have more of Pitta Prakopa, where you have more of inflammatory changes. Murivenna also is very effective in Pitta Pradhana Avastha. And Gandha Thailam can be used in local application in very, very acute pain. So because it is very costly, but it is equally effective. People who have severe pain in the wrist, severe pain in small joints where there is acute pain, you can, it is just a symptomatic relief. Basically, Gandha Thailam is very effective. Then there are several lepas, upanahas told in Ayurveda, which you can tell the patient to do it at home. Grahadumadi Churnam is available. Tila Shattahvam is a classical lepam. It is available. It can be prepared at home. So Grahadumadi Churnam is used in Vata Pitta condition. It's a very good lepam to bring down the pain and the swelling. Grahadumadi can be used with some Vatahara Dravya, like you can use Dhanyamla, you can use tamarind water, you can use rice washed water or ginger water. So any Ushna Vatahara Dravyas can be used. You can make a churna, you can make a paste of it and make a lepam. Or you can use Upanaham, where you can certain churnas can be added with some Vata Kafahara Dravyas like tamarind water, lemon juice. Sometimes you can use buttermilk. So all these are little bit of Karpuram can be used. So some Ushna Tikshna Dravyas, depending on the condition, you make it into a paste and make a bandage. You put the bandage at night and you can take it out in the morning. So it is very effective. Depending on the Vata Pitta predominance, you can add different kinds of Dravyas to it. Dashamula Churnam, if it in Coimbatore and many of the hospitals in Kerala, you have Dashamula Churnam available, which can be boiled or cooked in milk and made into a paste. Rasnadi Churnam is commercially available. It can be used in Kapha Vata predominance. It helps to bring down the pain and swelling. Next. So when we were talking about the musculoskeletal level of management, where we are looking at more of Vata Kapha predominant conditions, here we will be discussing about the Shamana Chikitsa of most of the Pitta Vata or Pitta Kapha conditions, which include connective tissue diseases, dermatological spectrum diseases like psoriasis, SLE, DLE, autoimmune vasculitis, scleroderma. So you look at the key points you have to keep in mind when you are treating Pitta Vata or Pitta Kapha conditions where Pitta Rakta predominance is more. So you have to look at the dosha, which is more of Pitta predominant. So you have to look at Twak Sandhi Vishesha. Most of the time the disease affect the Rasa Rakta Dhatu. So the Twak Sandhi Vishesha has to be seen. It should be Rakta Prasadhana, which is general, and Sattva-Vajaya component also have to be kept in mind. So if you look at the Kashayams which we use, most of the Kashayams are having Vata Pitta or Pitta Kapha. Most of the Kashayams are having more of Pitta Hara properties. So Mahamanjishthaji can be used. Kokilakshakam is one of the Agradravya in Vata Rakta, as Vagbhatta has told. Kokilakshaka Niryuha Pitas Tachaka Bhojinam Kripabhyasa Iva Krodham Vata Raktam Niyachati. But Kokilakshakam is very effective in Pitta Vata Rakta, which can also be used in dermatological spectrum also, psoriatic arthritis. And many of the Rakta Mamsagata Kushtha conditions, Vispotas, Putaka, Vidradi, all these conditions which are seen in many of the rheumatological diseases. Like I had mentioned in my previous slide, there is a condition called hidradenitis suppurativa. So it's a very painful condition where you get Vidradis or abscesses. They are all basically non-infective but inflammatory abscesses which are more seen in your armpits, in the inside of the thighs, on the buttocks. So they come and go, are very painful. So in such conditions where it is an autoimmune trigger, basically Kokilakshakam, Tiktakam, and Shuddha Pittahara Tiktakam can be used. Mahatiktakam Kashayam, it is also very effective. Guglu Tiktakam, because there are the Kerala style of Ayurveda, we come across many formulations which have been classically told in Grita form, have been converted into Kashayam. So they are also equally effective. Aragvadhadi Kashayam, when there is lot of Kapha predominance and Kleda predominance is there, conditions where there is lot of infection, oozing. You can use Aragvadadi. Nimbadi is also very effective in Mamsagata conditions where you have Vidradis, Kotha, Utkotha conditions. Pittahara tablets like Amritadi Gugulu, Kaishora Gugulu, and even Chandraprabha can be used. So I have kept it to the bare minimum which can be used for all these conditions. Grita Grita Guglu Tiktaka Grita is very effective. Rasna the Shumuladi Gritam also can be used. Most importantly, Mahatiktaka Gritam as Shamana Snehana is excellent. As you all know that Mahatiktaka Gritam has more around 50% of Amalaki Swarasa. That is the basic difference. 50% of Mahatiktaka Gritam has Amalaki Swarasa. It is one of the best Rasayana for Rakta Pitta conditions or Pitta Kapha conditions. Kalyanaka Grita is very important when you look at the Sattva-Vajaya Chikitsa. See, Kalyanaka is a broad spectrum. It is one of my favorite Gritam also after Guglu Tiktakam. It has a broad spectrum of action. When you look at the Phalashruti, it covers many of the systems. Usually Kalyanaka Gritam we restrict it to Apasmara, Unmada and Stri Roga conditions, and in Vandyatva it is used in fertility, but it has a broad spectrum. When you look at the Phalashruti, Acharya says Pandav Kushthe Vishe Shoshe Mohe Mehe Gare Jware. So right from Pandav up to Garavisha, it has a big spectrum. So Kalyanaka Gritam can be used especially in fibromyalgia conditions where the the psychological component of the disease is high. Kshirabala Avarti in Vata Pitta condition, Dhanvantara Avarti. And when you look at the Eranda Thailam, you have the Gugulu Tiktaka Grita Yogam made in Eranda Thailam. We call it as Timbamrita Erandam. So that can be given periodically for as a Sneha Virechana, mild Sneha Virechana regularly. Next, please. Next slide. And we look at previous slide. Yes. So when we look at the Bahya Chikitsa for such conditions, you have to look at more of Pittahara, Kafahara Dravyas. So Pinda Taila, Mahanarana Taila, Madhyasthadi Taila is very good in vasculitis conditions. Eladi Tailam is very good in dermatological conditions. Chandanadi Taila, Lakshadi Taila is very good in Pittahara Daha conditions, where you have Sarvanga Daha, Ekanga Daha, where Chandanadi and Lakshadi is very effective. Then Ekanga level management, local application, Pinda Tailam, Eladi coconut oil, Murivenna, Durvadi Tailam, Shatadhauta Gritam, very effective in Daha conditions. Jatyadi Gritam, very effective in ulcerative conditions. Tiktaka Gritam also can be externally given in very mridu bhagas like lips, nasal, inside the nostrils, above the eyes, in the genital areas where mridu Guna is needed. Tiktaka Grita can be used. And Lepa is more than Lepa. I am not, there are certain conditions where Lepa can be used when there is no skin breach. You have a Pitta, you have a vasculitis condition where there is no breach of skin. Eladi Churnam Lepams can be used, but if there is a breach of skin or there is high inflammation, then it is better we use Dhara Parisheka of the Kashayams made of these dravyas. So most commonly what you can use in the OPD is Trifla Churna. Trifla Churna Kashayam can be used for Ekanga Parisheka or Sarvanga Parisheka in Pitta Kapha conditions, very effective. It also acts as an Amapachaka externally also. It is Vrana Ropaka and Pittahara, Kledahara, so very important. Nimbadi Churna is also equally beneficial. So these can be used for Parisheka. You have a condition where there is something in the knee or a foot, you have a vasculitic condition with lot of pain and burning. You can ask them to do simple Parisheka with Trifla Churnam twice a day. So it is equally effective. Next slide, please. Now we come to the most important aspect of managing rheumatological condition. The Panchakarma Chikitsa, as you know, I had mentioned earlier, most of among the Panchakarma, Vasti, Virechana and Raktamokshana are predominantly used for the rheumatological spectrum of diseases. So among these spectra, see, usually if there is Vata Pitta or Vata, if the Vata is the predominant dosha in the disease manifestation and the symptomatology, you have a Vata Pitta samsarga or you have a Vata Kapha samsarga. Vasti is the first choice of treatment. So you Anuvasana Vastis with various Vatahara Tailas, Vata Pittahara Tailas can be used. Dhanvantran Taila, Kshirabala Taila, Madhyasthadi Tailam, all these are classical preparations. Gugulu Tiktaka Ghritam, very commonly used everywhere. Kashaya Vasti, Niroha Vasti or Asthapana Vasti can be used. In our hospital, we have a limited range of Vastis which we employ effectively. Madhu Tailika Vasti is very effective. Eranda Taila, Eranda Moolam, which has little bit of Gomutra, is very effective in Vata Kapha condition. Vaitarana Vasti has Gomutra, it is very effective in Vata Kapha condition. Kshiravasti is predominantly effective in Vata Pitta condition, and it is very effective. And the Kshira Paka can be made according to your requirement. You can use simple panchatiktaka dravyas. You can use simple madhyashti or simple guduchadi. There are, it is your, whatever is locally available, whatever is pittahara can be made into a kshirapaka, because the quantity of the basti, total basti dravya is so limited, and it is around about 500 ml. So it is easily tolerable even for any kind of patients, and it doesn't irritate the bowel. Mustadi Yapana Bastis can be given, which is very effective. Mustadi Yapana Vasti, Raja Yapana Vasti has Mamsarasa in it, where you are looking at more of Rasayana kind of effect, where you are looking at long-term Dhatu Poshana and effect. Yapana Vastis like Mustadi Yapana Vasti, Raja Yapana Vasti can be given. So Vasti, especially Kshira Vasti for Vata Pitta conditions, Madhutailika Vasti, Erandamula for Vata Kapha conditions, Vaitarana for Vata Kapha conditions is very effective. Next slide, please. Connective tissue dermatological spectrum, where you have more of Pitta Kapha dominance, vasculitis, scleroderma, psoriasis. Virechana is the primary choice of treatment. So you can use usually you have a Pitta predominance with Vata Kapha Anubandham, because as the Acharya has told, Virechana is a Panchakarma. Panchakarma is a mode of Panchakarma which eliminates Vata, Pitta and Kapha. It is Tridoshahara in its effect. So that part is always kept in mind when we look at the Virechanam as a Shodhana Kriya. So Pitta with Vatanubandha, Vata Kaphanubandha condition, Virechana can be used. So it can be any kind of vasculitis where the Rasa Rakta Dushti is visible. You have lesions in the skin. You have conditions where there are pustules, all the Kota, Utkota, Vispota, Vidradi conditions. All those Pitta Kapha predominant conditions, we can give Virechana. Guglu Tiktaka Ghritam and Tiktaka Ghritam are very effective. Virechana Dravya, the Sukha Virechana, I would always say Trivrid Lehyam and Avipatti Churnam are the two best Sukha Virechana Dravyas, in the sense they are easily palatable and doesn't cause any cramps, and most of the patient tolerate it. So anywhere between 20 to 40 grams of Trivrid Lehyam, 25 to 30 grams of Avipatti Churnam is what in general we give for Virechanam. Vata with Pitta Anubandha condition, we can use Kshira Vastis, which are equally effective. So Vata Pittahara Anuvasana with Guglu Tiktaka Grita or Madhyashthyadi Grita can Madhyashthyadi Taila can be used. Kshira Vastis, as I told, Kshira Vastis where we can use Drava Dravya in terms of Vajjatikta, Guduchi, Madhyashthi, and such Manjishtha, Kokilakshaka, sometimes Dashamula, medicines which are having Rakta Prasadana and Pittahara Guna can be used for Vasti. Vamana, very rare cases we use if there is a Kapha Utklesha with there is a Kapha predominance with Pitta Anubandha. We employ Vamana, but it is very, very rare. Next slide, please. This is a topic of hot discussion where people are very much interested in. See, we call it as it's a misnomer. We call it as Keraliya Panchakarma Chikitsa. So Panchakarma is not it's a misnomer. It's not the right word to use. We can call it as Keraliya Chikitsa Paddhati. So, but commercial viability, we have a lot of institutes and Ayurvedic centers using Kerala Panchakarma as their USP. So understand Keraliya Panchakarma Paddhati, unfortunately, is a highly misused treatment protocol. Even though it is very effective, lot of compromises have been made due to the commercial aspect of the science, which I feel very bad. My guru Ravindra, Dr. Ravindran sir used to always say that it is the Ayurvedic doctor himself who through his deeds brings bad name to the science. He always say it is people like us, we have to stand up and promote the right kind of Ayurveda. See, Keraliya Panchakarma Paddhati or the Keraliya Chikitsa Paddhati, even though you have to keep in mind one aspect of Ayurveda. When you look at the growth of Ayurveda or the evolution of Ayurveda across India, Kerala was a state because of its geographical conditions. It was a state where the modern, when the British set in and when they tried to bring in the Western system of medicine, Kerala as a state could not be penetrated in a big way because of its geographical boundaries and also because of the people's belief in the traditional Ayurvedic system of medicine. So that has helped the Paramparya Vaidyas, we call them as the Ashtavaidya families, who have been the custodians of Kerala style of Ayurveda, and they have done a lot in promoting the Kerala style as it is today. Most of these Kerala Chikitsa Paddhatis are derived from the classical text itself, but they have tried to interpret it in a way which has been done after undergoing lot of trial and errors. So you have a Siddhanta, and Ayurveda always believes in the concept of Karya Karana Vada. So any change or a drastic shift in any fundamentals have to be done in such a way that you don't lose the basic structure of the Siddhanta. So they have made lot of changes. They have taken lot of Siddhantas from the Swedana. If you look at most of the Kerala Chikitsa Paddhatis, most of them, these references of these can be found in the Sweda Adhyaya of Charaka, Vagbhata, and they have just used the basic framework and they have tried to apply it in a context which is not far away from the fundamentals. So what do you mean by, what is the speciality of Kerala Chikitsa? So when we look Kerala, in Kerala the Panchakarma Chikitsa has been modified in such a way, as most of the people are aware, where the Purva Karma, when you look at the Snehana and Swedana, Abhyantara Snehana and the Bahya Abhyantara Snehana and the Bahya Swedana protocol of classical Panchakarma, they have combined it into a single therapy. So the Shodhana remains the same. You have the same Vamana, the Shodhana remains the same. So these two conditions are the Snehana and Swedhana as a Pura Karma has been clubbed, and it has to be said that these two clubbing of Snehana and Swedana has in turn helped the science of Ayurveda. In the sense, it has become more acceptable, it has become more patient friendly and also more tolerable. So when people talk about Kerala Ayurveda treatments like Sarvanga Dhara, the Dhara and Purichil, the Kaya Sekams, we employ techniques wherein we bypass the Abhyantara Snehana of the classical Pura Karma of Panchakarma Chikitsa. So you have a person who has to undergo snehanam with abhyantara snehanam, after which you are giving him swedanam in the Vishramakala, followed by a Shodhana. In Kerala Chikitsa Paddhati, the patient is the Amapachana, Deepana, Pachana level of management internally remains the same, but externally, instead of administering Snehana, we subject the patient to Bahya Snehana, wherein oils, specific medicated dravyas are used to create Abhyantara Sneha and Sweda effect externally, which in turn has a bearing on the Doshotklesha. It has a bearing on the Shakat, Koshta, Agamana. All these things happen with this level of management also. When we talk about the Sneha Sweda Parishkara in terms of Dhara and Prichil, we also have to keep in mind that Kerala Ayurveda Chikitsa has given us lot of external Amapachana Chikitsas like Dhanyamla Dhara, Kashaya Dhara, portals like Pinta Sweda, Shashtika Shali. These are all treatments which are done as a Amapachana protocol. So it is not that each and every patient who is coming for an inpatient treatment is subjected to a Dhara Parichil. So it is not the case. So fundamentals are properly secured, and according to the Avastha Vishesha, you do an Amapachana Chikitsa, and then you do the relevant treatments which are needed. So bypassing the Abhyantara Snehana makes it more tolerant for a wide group of patients. So in our classics, there are mentions of Anarha Purushas for lot of Purva Karmas and Pradhana Karmas. So in detail, they have given different Anarha conditions for Snehapana, Anarha conditions for Svedana, Anarha conditions for Vamana, Anarha conditions for Virechana. In such people, this type of Bahya Snehana is very tolerant. So I would give you an example. If you have a patient who is coming with chronic insulin dependent diabetes with a triple vessel disease, and he has arthritis, can a patient be subjected to a classical Sneha Sweda Shodhana treatment? It is not possible. But if the same patient can be subjected to this Kerala Panchakarma Chikitsa Paddhati, where he will be tolerant towards the external Taila or Kaya Seka treatment, and he will be able to derive at least 80-90% of the benefit of classical Panchakarma. So in such people, aged people having lot of dangerous comorbidities where Snehana, Abhyantara Snehana can never be given, these treatments are very effective, and that makes a case for many people in our campus. Basically, more than 60-70% of the patients who come here are aged above 60. So most of these people can tolerate these such kind of treatments. And one most important Sattvavajaya Chikitsa what we employ during this treatment is Shirodhara. So Shirodhara along has that psychosomatic effect. So Shirodhara and Sarvangadhara is regularly done as a part of Kerala Chikitsa Paddhati. So it can be done together or it can be done separately also. That Shirodhara treatment where the Vatanulomana effect is achieved helps in coping up of the psychological effects of any long-term disease condition. So Shirodhara becomes very important. Next slide. Now we come to the last stage of Shamana Chikitsa, where you end most of the Ayurvedic treatments. They have to end with Rasayana, Nitya Rasayanas. So most of the people are familiar with all these effects: Amalaki, Guduchi, Shilajit, Lehya rasayanas like Chavanaprasham, Brahma rasayanam, Trifala formulations, Grita kalpanas like Guglu Tiktaka Gritam, Maha Tiktaka Gritam. Guglu Tiktaka Gritam can be given as a Nitya Rasayana long term. Then you have the minimum maintenance Avarti, Tailas, Kshirabala 101, Dhanvantram 101, even Sahacharadi Peya, we call it Sahacharadi Avarti. You have Sahacharadi 3 Avarti, Sahacharadi 7 Avarti, Sahacharadi 21 Avarti. It is more effective in Siraja Granthi or vascular disorders. So these are medicines which have to be given on long-term basis. Next slide, please. Allopathic intervention in rheumatology. So this is a very important aspect of treating these conditions. As you know that as far as I see, more than 70% of patients I treat, fresh cases of rheumatological diseases, they have already taken treatment with a rheumatologist. So it becomes a challenge in Ayurveda when people come to you. They expect that they have to stop. The first expectation is they have to benefit. The second expectation is they have heard about the long-term side effects and the adverse effects of usage of such disease-modifying drugs. So they are in a hurry. They are very excited to stop or stop these medications. So when you look at the allopathic line of management, you have the pain analgesics, the NSAIDs, anti-inflammatories. You can see steroids which can be used. Most importantly, they use disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So methotrexate is still now the first choice across the world because of its long efficacy and also the cost factor. Methotrexate, as I think many people know, that is one of the best and the cheapest chemo drug available in India. So methotrexate is given as chemo medicine even in most of the government cancer facilities for liver cancers, gut cancers. In a lot of cancer conditions, it is the choice of drug for. It has been for a long time. So initially it was discovered as a anti-cancer drug, and as time goes, its effect in rheumatological condition and its effect on autoimmune disease was found out. So Azoran is also a very old drug. Leflunomide is also an old drug. These are all regularly used. HCQS, most of the people have come to know about HCQS after the COVID pandemic. And the most important radical shift in the management of rheumatoid arthritis across the world is the advent of biologics. So you have to see the difference between disease modifying drugs like methotrexate, Azoran, and what is the difference between biologics and the other medications. See, other medications are basically synthetic chemicals, but biologics are drugs where they use parts of a living organism. So parts of a living organism, in the sense the proteins, the DNAs, all these things are used in biologics. So all the biologics are using parts of a living organism. So the usage of biologics in India also has increased. Nowadays in Coimbatore also, I have seen many rheumatologists prescribing biologics, and in Tamil Nadu, the government, the medical college also provides a few biologics for different autoimmune conditions. Biologics have been a game changer in the sense for the Western medicine in the management of many autoimmune diseases. So most of the biologics are available in a pre-filled injection. The only factor is the cost factor. You have got biologics which start from 10,000 rupees pre-fill. It may go up to 1 lakh rupees an injection, which has to be used periodically, once a week, some cases once in 2 weeks, some cases once in 3 weeks, once in a month. There are certain biologics which are used once in 3 months. So the cost part is very important, and biologics have the risk of always keeping your immune system suppressed, and it is not that you can stop the biologics. According to the Western medicine, biologics is also like the normal anti-rheumatic drugs. They have to be continued lifelong. You cannot come out of it. So these factors have to be factored in when you are treating a patient of a rheumatological condition. Next slide. So challenges in treatment. So what do you do? So you have patients who meet you or who approach you with the patients who approach you who are already on DMRDs. So how do you tackle such patients? So there are few things you have to keep in mind while you have to treat patients who are already on anti-rheumatic drugs. So first and foremost, I would ask everyone to have a basic knowledge of the commonly available disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. That is very important. How the basic pharmacodynamics and the pharmacokinetics and some of the famous brand names which are available across the market, you have to keep in mind. Then only you will know. I have seen many patients who have been told by Ayurvedic doctors to stop all the medicines and take only Ayurveda, and they have landed up with many complications and withdrawal symptoms. So first and foremost is you have to tell the patient to avoid sudden stoppage of medicines. If the patient is on steroid, it is better if he is taking a 5 mg steroid BD, tell him to take it 5 mg OD, tell him to take it 5 mg alternate days, and it would be a slow withdrawal, so that you have a time period where our medicines also will start working and the withdrawal symptoms also can be minimized. So tapering the medications are very important. You have drugs like methotrexate, which they have a formula in Western medicine. They look at the body weight and there are few factors which are taken into consideration. And it is once a week medication. You have people who are taking 10 mg of methotrexate, 15 mg of methotrexate. I have seen patients who are taking up to 30 mg of methotrexate. It is taken once a week at a time. You have 30 mg, you get 10 mg tablets. So they are very powerful. It has a lot of side effects. They have an effect on the blood count. So regularly you have to check your blood count, and your liver function tests have to be done. So I have seen patients where they have told me that the methotrexate was stopped by the rheumatologist after his liver values went up. So there are risks, but it is the most commonly used anti-rheumatic drug across the spectrum of diseases in rheumatology. So when you look at the spectrum of rheumatology, right from musculoskeletal to dermatological, even psoriasis, methotrexate is the choice of drug. So you have to taper the medicine. So what we have done, many of them are aware that we have done a study on rheumatoid arthritis with NIH, National Institute of Health, US, John Hopkins University, and AVP Coimbatore, where we were very fortunate to interact with a rheumatologist called Daniel First. He is the chief advisor to NIH on rheumatology. He's a great teacher, very humble person, very eager, very much forthcoming. So he was telling me, I'm telling this around 10-15 years back, and I have been using the same way of tapering for most of the patients on methotrexate. He told me that if at all you want to reduce methotrexate, you have to reduce it at the rate of 2.5 mg every 8 weeks. So you have a person who is on methotrexate asymptomatic, you tell him to stop the medicine. The half-life period of methotrexate is high. First 2 months the patient is happy, you are happy, he is running around, and suddenly once the bioavailability of methotrexate reduces, immediately the patient gets outbreak of arthritis and he comes running to you. So that being the case, you have to always understand that stopping allopathy, you may not see the withdrawal very easily. So methotrexate, what I do here and what my colleagues do here, what we have been told is, if a person is taking 20 mg of methotrexate, when he is starting on Ayurveda, we tell him to, if the symptoms have to be stable, you have to keep that in mind. Is not blindly withdrawing any medicine. If the patient is stable, then you start with reducing it by 2.5 mg. So the patient is taking 20 mg methotrexate, you tell him to take 17.5 mg every week and do it for 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, you can check the blood, do the blood test and the inflammatory markers. If still stable, again reduce it by 2.5 mg, make it 15 mg. So if you can taper it in that way, I think it gives enough opportunity for the patient also to tolerate, and we also will not land up in big trouble. So look out for the withdrawal symptoms. So most of the withdrawal symptoms are the pradhana lakshanas of that particular disease are the withdrawal symptoms. So recurrence of those symptoms. You have psoriasis. You know, I have seen patients who have taken methotrexate for psoriasis. Once a week they take it. Imagine they are taking 15 mg every week. If they forgot or they delayed by 3-4 days, you can see small scalings happening in their body. So these are very powerful immunosuppressants. So you have to be very careful while withdrawing those medications. And people who are on regular anti-rheumatic drugs, you have to monitor their LFT, CBC, and if possible also kidney function once in 6 months. So monitor LFT and CBC once in 3 months. And kidney function, if it's a diabetic patient, you also have to look at the kidney function. And patients who are not on DMRDs, how do you go about it? So there are two ways of approaching the patients. There are people who are, see, arthritis patients, there are certain patients who might have gone to a general physician or a orthopedic doctor or a neurologist, or they go for as family physicians. So most of these people, when they go, they give them standard anti-inflammatories and immunosteroids. These are, so if you go to your family doctor with joint pain, most probably he will give you a anti-inflammatory medicine, and sometimes if it is very acute, he'll put you on some steroids. So if the patients are in such medicines, then also I would always tell that don't stop it abruptly. So it is more easy for you to taper patients who are not on disease modifying drugs. So slowly taper the NSAIDs and slowly taper the steroids in long run. Even I have got patients, sometimes what happens, people who are continuously and for a prolonged period, they are on anti-inflammatories and steroids. I have got patients who say, I take a 2 mg steroid. He was taking 10 mg steroid twice a day. After 6 months, 1 year also, I don't know whether it is psychological or not. He says once in 2 or 3-4 days, I take half tablet, 2 mg steroid I take. I don't know how far it helps him, but psychologically he feels good. So there are people who are habituated. There are people who use anti-inflammatory. They say once a week, I may sometimes take half a tablet. So it has become a routine for them. So those psychological considerations have to be kept in mind. And see, ultimately you are aiming at the first outcome of treatment should be he is completely out of allopathic medications and he's put on only Ayurvedic medications in long run. So that will be the most expected or favorable outcome. But you have to be prepared, wherein you have to prepare to in situations where in very chronic conditions where the autoimmune trigger is so bad, it is not possible that you are able to completely cut off allopathic medications in long run. So in such conditions, you have to be reasonable in our approach. I have got patients who are taking 25-30 mg of methotrexate. After 12 to 18 months, I have brought them up to 10 mg or I have brought them up to 5 mg. The problem is when you lower it below 5 mg, the patient has some aches and pains. So that also has to be taken into consideration. You have a treatment protocol where you reach a state where 80% management is done with Ayurveda and 10 to 20% of management is done with allopathy. That also have to be factored in, and there are cases where the patient is on complete Ayurvedic medications, and there may be conditions or flare-ups in between. You have conditions because of seasons. You have winter time, which is bad for most of the arthritic patients and rheumatological patients. There are people who come and ask me, there is a fluctuation in pain. Can I take a painkiller for 4-5 days? Or can I take that steroid medicine which my previous doctor had advised? Can I take it for a few days? So in terms of patient's benefit and his psychological benefit, I don't feel anything wrong in suggesting a limited allopathic treatment for a limited period in terms of certain flare-ups, sometimes where we may not be able to help them. So a perfect balance has to be achieved. At the outset, you have to know what kind of management you are expecting with Ayurveda, how much of benefit you are giving the patient with Ayurveda, and how much of allopathy can be reduced or minimized or stopped. So perfect understanding will help in giving an overall benefit to the patient. Next slide. So regular investigations, what has to be done? So there are hundreds and hundreds of immunological tests which are given, which are told in many rheumatological conditions. But I am just putting out few of the basic screening tests which are used for many of the conditions, frequently seen conditions. So RA factor has to be seen, ANA, anti-CCP. Anti-CCP, I think many people know that if RA is negative and anti-CCP is positive, still we call it as an rheumatoid arthritis patient. So the protocol says that most of the screening are to just name a disease. So even in arthritis, you have rheumatoid arthritis patients, and 30-40% of the people who come with polyarthritis, the RA test is negative, but still they have all the classical symptoms. So it is just to name the disease. If you have the same symptoms and RA is positive, you can call yourself as a rheumatoid arthritis patient. Otherwise, you can call yourself as a seronegative patient. But the new protocol says that if the RA is negative and anti-CCP is positive, we have to, anti-CCP is almost 90-95% sensitive in its results. So RA test is around 60 to 70% sensitive. So even in most of the studies, if RA is negative and anti-CCP is positive, then we can say that the patient has rheumatoid arthritis. So most of the conditions, just to name the disease, RA and anti-CCP are done together. Then you have the ANA spectrum. See, ANA, you can have an ANA test, and there is an ANA panel of tests where you can see a lot of other diseases like Sjogren's condition and other things can be seen. HLA-B27 is very commonly seen in people suffering from ankylosing spondylitis. So if it is positive, you call him ankylosing spondylitis. If the HLA-B27 is negative, it doesn't make any difference in the outcome. You call him as seronegative spondyloarthropathy. So in allopathy also, in Ayurveda also, the naming of the disease is irrelevant in deciding the overall treatment protocol. Even ASO is commonly done. But most important tests which as an Ayurvedic physician, important test as an Ayurvedic physician we have to do is ESR and CRP, and IL-6 has become more relevant after the post-COVID pandemic. So it is a very costly test, but the age-old practice is you clinically assess the patient every time and also do the ESR CRP test ESR for some time, but CRP regularly. CRP for acute conditions, but ESR in long term, so that the overall inflammatory status in the body is assessed. And these tests are very relevant if you are trying to taper disease modifying drugs. So first and foremost, the clinical evaluation of the patient is very important, and it has to be correlated with the inflammatory markers. So there are a lot of, if you go into the net, you can find a certain specific arthritis indexes like DAS28. So disease activity index is called DAS28. It is available. So the same thing holds good for most of the other rheumatological conditions, in SLE, in scleroderma, in most of the vasculitis conditions. These are very relevant. Next slide, please. So take home points, what we do, we should acknowledge the basic things. So we should acknowledge the reality and predominance of the Western system in healthcare. So there should be a balance. Every medical science has its limitations. So what is the strength of Ayurveda? What is the strength of allopathy? It has to be combined and treated. So we have to tell the patient about the short-term benefits of allopathic intervention and long-term benefits of Ayurveda. Integrated approach is very important. Ultimately, the patient's comfort level has to be seen. So sometimes it can be achieved only with Ayurveda. Sometimes you may need little allopathic intervention. So while rising up to the challenges and requirements of modern society, allopathic doctor or Ayurvedic doctors should update themselves in the various aspects of diagnosis, pharmacology, and treatment. See, when you only have knowledge about the medicines and the disease, your counter or the Western, the allopathic way, then only you will be able to interpret it in the Ayurvedic way. And the medicines which you are, sometimes people are taking long-term medications, dangerous medications. If you want the patient to stop or taper it, you have to have the knowledge of both sides. And the final thing what I would like to say is our Tridosha Siddhanta has withstood the test of time. So demonstrating its utility in treating new conditions. Even when you look at COVID-19, people are talking about Vata, Kafaja, Jwara, Samprapti and such things. So the Tridosha Siddhanta is relevant every time, and it is relevant in any new condition which may come in the future. So it needs the right kind of interpretation to make it relevant to the changing times. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I think I would like to dedicate this whole session to our Guru Padma Shri P.R. Krishna Kumar ji, who has been a leading light in the field of Ayurveda. He is no more with us, but his legacy will continue to encourage and promote Ayurvedic practitioners. Thank you very much for the listening.
Thank you, sir. It is now my pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the institution and teaching staff. I express my sincere gratitude to Dr. P.T. Keshavan Nambishan, sir, for today's insightful session. I express my gratitude to our principal, sir, for arranging such an insightful session and giving me an opportunity to host this session. I would also like to thank my colleague, Dr. Konik Singh Chauhan, for his support throughout the session. Last but not the least, I thank all the students for their silent hearing. Once again, thank you all.